Afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Burkhardt. I'm the Executive Director of the Texas Indigent Defense Commission. Today, we have with us the incoming president for the Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers Association, Grant Scheiner. We're very excited to have Grant today. He's going to be talking about online tools and ways that you can help move your practice online right now, especially during COVID-19. Grant, if you could move to the next slide. So, quick disclaimer, we are very excited to partner with TCDLA on this. But the webinar, of course, TIDC or TCDLA, we don't necessarily endorse anything or any products or anything that come up during this talk. If you haven't watched them, past webinars that we've had, they're listed on the screen right now. The first one, I would really recommend starting with this one, Online Courts for Defense Attorneys by Kathleen Casey-Gomez. A really good kind of precursor to all the rest in the series. If you've never used Zoom, or if you've only used Zoom for conference calls and not for going to court, that's the place to start. The next one, Online Courts and the Law. This was by Jennifer Lauren, and Jennifer Lauren dealt with basically the confrontation clause, equal protection, due process, all kinds of things that are involved and kind of wrapped up in online courts. And then this past week we had early adopters, Online Courts in Practice. We had both James McDermott, who is the Chief Public Defender for Far West Texas, but we also had David Slayton, who's the Administrative Director for the Office of Court Administration. So those are some of the past webinars, all available online. And upcoming webinars, next week we have Padilla in the Age of Online Courts. There's a really cool tool called My Padilla that's being used all throughout the 3rd Administrative Judicial Region. We hope to go statewide with it at some point, but we're going to be talking about how you can get Padilla advisals online. The week after that, Kathleen Casey-Gomez is going to come back with Casey Kennedy, who's the head of the Office of Court Administration's IT department. And he's one of the people really behind the move to online courts. So they're gonna be talking about what things look like 1 month in and what kind of lessons we've learned so far. And then finally, we'll have another professor from the University of Texas. This is gonna be Chris Roberts, who is a private attorney. He was also an attorney at the Public Defender Service office in DC, one of the best PD offices in the nation. And he's going to be talking about client-centeredness in the age of COVID-19, so that should be pretty good too. If you haven't joined us for these webinars before, be sure to use the Q&A function for any questions you have for Grant. We'll get to as many questions as we possibly can toward the end. And Grant, thank you again for being here today, and I'll let you take it away.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Hello, everyone, and I'm broadcasting to you from my home office. So you can see in the background my computer setup and so on and so forth. Via Zoom. I want to take a moment to thank TIDC. TCDLA has partnered with TIDC on a number of projects, and I was telling Jeff earlier, we always enjoy it and we hope to do a lot more work together in the future. I'd also like to take a moment to introduce my co-presenter, Claudia Hips. Claudia has worked with me at Scheiner Law Group in Houston for 11 going on 12 years. And Claudia has a varied background. She's worked in other areas of the law, but Claudia is also a board-certified paralegal in criminal law and one of only 12 in the entire state of Texas. So many of the things we'll be talking about come under Claudia's purview. So I'm, Claudia, going to ask you that if I stray or get any of the information wrong, just please volunteer, and maybe some of the Q&A at the end of the lecture will be directed at you as well, okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, so we're ready to get started. Today's lecture is Ditch the Paper, Ditch the Plastic, Ditch the Brick and Mortar, if you dare to try. We're going to be covering basic tools for working virtually in the new age. Now, when I say basic, I mean very basic. For some of you, you're going to look at this and say, well, gosh, I'm already doing that. And if that's true, then that's perfect for you. Hopefully, at the end of the lecture, we'll get into some of the more thought-provoking and maybe even some of the more advanced stuff. But for now, we're just going to cover some of the basic tools that you need if you're going to start moving your practice more online. And that's the goal. The reason why you want to move as much of your practice online as possible is because, number one, it's often less expensive than having paper files and having to store them. Number two, it's secure so that if anything happens, you know you'll have backups. And number three, it's reliable in terms of tech support. If you subscribe to various online tools, usually they have companies behind them and they're willing to walk you through. But before we get started, I'm going to walk you through some of the basics that we already have and we already know about. We're already doing some online stuff right now, which is e-filing. Texas has had e-filing for a while now, and generally speaking, with very rare exceptions, we know that all Texas lawyers have to file motions and briefs and pleadings, notices, and the like. You file them online. And the way that it works is you can use this website here, efiletexas.gov. If for some reason you haven't signed up, and virtually every lawyer you'll run into has this up and running already, you can go to that website and then you'll choose a service, a portal through which you can work to get your stuff filed. So that's the good thing, which is that most of us are already online a little bit. We know how to file stuff and we know how to access things that other parties in the case, like your opposing counsel, have already filed. It's been that way for years now on the federal side. There's an electronic case management system that they use through the PACER system. So that's all good stuff. And that's a good jumping off point for us. But how do you make your own stuff scanned and put into a format that you can upload it either for purposes of e-filing or for storing it for your own client files? Let me say at the very beginning that paper files, client paper files, are not going to disappear anytime soon. You don't have to worry about that. And your system, if it's a mostly paper system, will not become completely obsolete, and here's why. A paper system is a good backup. A paper file for a client in a file cabinet is a good backup when all else fails. If you lose access to the internet or your system crashes for some reason. And as anyone can tell you who's prepared for a trial, fewer things are more debilitating or frightening than if you don't have access to client material. So none of this will be geared towards saying ditch it in the sense that you'll throw it away and never look at it again. Ditch it means put it aside so that you won't have to see it. So what do you do with client files? Well, the first thing that you should do, and many people are already doing this, is invest in a good scanner. The scanner that you're seeing right on the screen right now is the Fujitsu ScanSnap. It's the model IX1500, and it retails for about $399. Now, you could probably get an older model, and you could probably get a used model for cheaper, but it shows you that for a few $100s, you can invest in something which is pretty much top of the line for small law offices. So before we tell you how to use it, let me tell you what this product can do. The Fujitsu ScanSnap, this model, it holds 50 pages. It scans 30 pages a minute, so you'd go through stuff very, very rapidly. It scans in color, double-sided. It scans into multiple formats. The most popular one is a PDF, but from what I understand, you can scan it into Microsoft Word. It has a touch screen for categorization, so that you can put documents and things in various categories, but it also has Wi-Fi capacity. This is what sets the new model away from some of the previous models. Because it has Wi-Fi capacity, it means it can connect to the internet and in some instances actually skip past your computer and scan things directly into the cloud. So if you have a service like Microsoft OneDrive or Google Drive or Dropbox or some of the others, you can scan your material right into those services. The older models, and we have, I think, a couple of older models at our office, have a cable that just plugs right into your computer. And when you put something into the scanning tray, the older models at least don't even have a touch screen. They just have a button, one button, and the button says scan. And once you press the button, the document feeder goes through and the image that you've scanned pops up on the screen of your computer, and then you can just name it something, and then you can drop it, you can drag it and drop it into whatever you want. A local hard drive where you're storing something, or an online storage service such as Dropbox. As you can see from the screen, this particular model scans all different sizes of things. So if you've got a business card, it handles it. Receipts, for tax purposes, it handles it. And of course, documents. So when would you ever scan documents in the digital era? Well, many courts are still using paper reset forms. So there's that. Sometimes an opposing counsel in court will hand you a hard copy of something. Maybe they didn't upload it into the district attorney portal. Or sometimes you'll get hard copies of photos or something that isn't online. Let's say you do court appointed work and you go down to the jail and your client has written you a handwritten letter and you want to put that into the file. That's what this is for. So you'll begin scanning things. This document thing, by the way, this scanner is very, very small. It's about the size of a loaf of bread. It sits on your desktop. And then when you're ready to use it, you just fold it out and it spools up in no time. So why doesn't everybody do this? Why don't all lawyers scan their stuff? Many lawyers do, but some don't. And the ones I've talked to tell me, well, I've got so many client files dating back years, I don't know how I'm going to scan them all. I've thought about getting a scanning service, but it's just really too intimidating for me to go back through all of my files. My advice to you is don't do that. When you're going to scan stuff, if you're just getting started, remember this: scan forward, not backward. As new cases come in and you open up new client files, scan that material. Leave the old stuff alone. And then what will happen over a period of months, you'll notice that gradually your files will move from paper to digital. The paper ones will cycle off as you dispose of cases. And as you get more new cases that come in, you'll open new client files, you'll scan the material, and then you'll have those documents in a digital format. So what kind of a scanner do you need? It doesn't have to be this particular model. There are other models available, and there are other services that make scanners. Here is my advice. Pick something that's reliable. Read online reviews. Go to Amazon. Check stuff out. The great thing about Amazon is you can input a search for a product like a ScanSnap IX1500. It'll pop up and show you a picture of it, and it'll also give you tons of reviews. You can see them and you can read them. And then if you scroll down to the bottom of the page for your Amazon, it'll say, viewers also looked at these products, and you'll begin to see what the competitors have. And you can pull that up and read those reviews too. Just get something that's reliable, something that scans accurately, something that scans double-sided and in color, and finally, something that can handle things in all different sizes and shapes. I would also be attentive to the price. You know that this thing here that I'm showing you on the screen retails for about $400. Try to spend no more than that if you've got a small law firm. All right. So that's a picture of what an old scanner used to look like. Don't worry about that. Those days are gone forever. You won't have to do single-sided scanning anymore for any reason. With a document feeder, you'll rip through this stuff in no time. So great. We've started to scan our stuff. We've got client files that are now digitized. We've got to have some place to put them. And you have two broad categories of options. They're both good for different reasons, and they both have some limitations. So let's talk about that. The first thing that you can do, if you're gonna scan something and store it someplace, you might consider getting a local storage device, a local hard drive. What you see on the screen here is just an external hard drive. They're made by companies like Seagate and Western Digital, and you can get them for even less than $100. I think at the time of this right now, $99 will get you something that's at least 5 terabytes in size, which is as much as most offices need right now. So it's a small little device. It's less than the size of a sandwich. Earlier, I mean years ago, when you had local storage, the device was much bigger and it wasn't portable. This, when you're done scanning, you can put it in your briefcase and you can carry it home, or you can carry it to court and you can have it with you. And as you can see, it usually comes with a cable. It plugs right in. There are various ways you can plug in a local hard drive, and you can set it up if you want to back up automatically so that it'll continually take a picture of what's on your device's hard drive, whether it's a notebook computer or a desktop computer. So that's a pretty good option. It's not the option that I use. In our office, we use online services. I purchased not long ago, when we were moving from one computer to the other, a local storage device just so we could store the stuff and not worry about losing it. But I think for the most part, people are investing in online storage. And let's spend a few minutes talking about that, because this is what I recommend that you do. Now on the screen, you see 1, 2, 3, 4 popular services. As I'm reading from left to right, it's iCloud, that's the Apple product. Dropbox, we'll spend a lot of time discussing that because that's very popular. Lower left, OneDrive. Microsoft OneDrive is a pretty good solution. And as we'll discover, if you subscribe to Office 365, then you get a free Microsoft OneDrive account. Probably not big enough, but it's a good start. In the lower right, Google Drive, that's a very popular service, but there are so many. Amazon makes a service. There's one called SugarSync. There's another one that's popular called Box. It doesn't really matter which one you get as long as it's reliable, it has good tech support, the price is right for you, and you're comfortable using it. So let's talk for a moment about Dropbox. Dropbox is what we use in our office. I would say about the only disadvantage for having online storage is that it can be expensive. Dropbox, for example, if you wanted to get 5 terabytes of space, right now I think they're running some kind of a deal where it's $12.50 a month, $12.50 per month per user. So if you have, say, 5 people in your office, then you do the math, you're going to be paying $60, $70, $80 a month every single month, month after month after month. Whereas a local hard drive, you only pay that one time. But once you get past the price, you'll find that there are so many advantages to having online storage. Dropbox, the most popular service for lawyers to use. It's ubiquitous, it's everywhere. It's easy to use. You just take files, once you've scanned them, or once you receive them by email, or even if somebody texts you something, a document, or a video, or an audio recording, maybe of a witness interview or something like that. You can drag it and drop it into Dropbox. It'll upload rapidly, and then everybody in your office, as long as they have the desktop widget to access Dropbox or some other kind of service, or on your mobile device, you can have a Dropbox app. Everybody has access to all of that material 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They can download it, they can modify it, they can upload it, somebody else can share it and remodify it. So once you find you have this flexibility of being able to use Dropbox or Box or iCloud, you'll probably never want to use anything else. In fact, once you begin scanning and storing all of your client files, you'll find that you don't need to take client files to court anymore because they'll be tucked away in some kind of file cabinet. In fact, you may not even need to take a briefcase to court anymore. All you will need is, if you want to do a hearing or a trial, you'll probably use a larger device like a notebook computer or maybe a large iPad or other tablet device. What I use every day is this. This is my iPhone. I take this to court, and let me see if I have it. Because we have to look like lawyers, I take a portfolio with me, it's upside down, and I tuck it into a briefcase, but really there's nothing else in my briefcase. On most court days, I don't need anything else, because by being able to access Dropbox, I've got all of my client files. And sometimes we get stuff that comes in through court. I'll text Claudia and say, hey, did we just get that note, that letter that the client wrote? I really need to see it, or that thing he printed out for us from the insurance company. And she'll say, hang on. And she scans it. And then within seconds, I have it in the palm of my hand. Once you start doing that, I think you'll never want to go back to anywhere else. I will make this promise to you. If you're trying to get started and you don't know what to do, you don't know where to start, or what products to get or how to use them even, text me, contact me. There are a lot of people at TCDLA who will help walk you through it, and I know I'll do my best to point you in the right direction. All right, so if you have Dropbox, I thought about the idea of showing you my own screen, but then I thought it was better probably not to show you my client files. So here is just some generic view of what it looks like on the screen of your iPhone if you have Dropbox. This guy has something that he says is a test folder, and then you see underneath it the individual files. And you'll notice they're in various formats. Where it says test folder in the middle of the screen, that's his Dropbox folder. There are little files in there, something called Alfred Migrate. That's a workflow. That's a particular type of document. He's got a .txt thing that says automatic tips. That means you can get things in various formats like text messages. Underneath that, he's got a PDF. Underneath that, he's got JPEGs. Those are just photos, images. So basically, anything that can be stored anywhere online in any format can be dragged and dropped into one of these cloud services. And it can be done seamlessly within seconds, and you will have access to it whenever you want. Think about this. If you were handling just an ordinary DWI video, you could watch it anywhere you wanted, anytime you wanted, just on your device. So wonderful stuff. At the bottom of the screen that I've circled, that's the basic setup of how it looks on a mobile device for Dropbox. Dead simple to use. You got your home tab. The next sets out your files. If you want to create a folder, you click the plus sign. If you want access to only your photos, there's a tab for that. And then the final stuff is your account. It tells you how much space you have and who has access to it. What else? Okay, great. So you're gonna pick an online service, and hopefully it'll be something that is easy for you to use, something that fits within your price range, and something that's reliable and it has good tech support. That's important because if you run into a problem, you wanna have somebody to call and fix it for you. So once you've got that going, your next thing is, okay, great. So what about my stuff? I now know how to scan things from other people, put them online and store them. What about when I want to create things? If you want to create an argument between lawyers, one of the things you can ask them about is what kind of word processing program should I use? For some reason, this is a point of contention. There are free services that are pretty good. Google Docs, great service. Apple Pages, it works pretty well. And it's actually free now. It used to have a Mac device, but I think you can get Apple Pages now for anything. So if you're comfortable using those things, you can. I would recommend that if it's within your budget, you should just invest in Microsoft Word. And the reason why is everybody uses it, and it's so much easier than having to convert things back and forth from Microsoft Word. If you have a colleague who's written a brief and wants to share it with you so that you won't have to rewrite the same brief, chances are you'll get it in Microsoft Word. And if you're using something else, you'll have to convert it. It'll be a quick conversion, but it's just easier than fighting against it. I know at the beginning of my career, I used WordPerfect, and I was brand loyal to WordPerfect until eventually Microsoft just crushed all the competitors, including WordPerfect. But here's another reason to invest in Microsoft Word. Microsoft, in a couple of weeks, is switching to something called MS 365 apps. And basically, it'll charge you $8.25 per month per user. So if you have multiple people in your office, you're all going to need to be separate users. Keep that in mind. But in addition to Microsoft Word, you're going to get other programs that you may rely on. You're watching this presentation on Microsoft PowerPoint. You get that as part of the subscription. If you use Excel, which is spreadsheets, you'll get that. You also get a version of Microsoft Outlook, which is an emailing and calendaring program. I don't use it, but it's a very good and stable program. And you also get a subscription to Microsoft OneDrive. Now, it's not as big storage as you need. I would recommend for any small law firm that you get at least 5 terabytes of online storage space, particularly if you're going to store videos and audios and large data files. But you get a subscription to Microsoft OneDrive. So this is your one-stop shopping. This is what I use, and this is what a lot of other lawyers use. So if you still haven't gotten a service for any reason you want to invest, I'd say go to Microsoft's main website and look into MS365 apps. Another product, I don't endorse products in the sense that these people know of me and give me something to endorse them. This is just what I use. Adobe Acrobat DC. Adobe Acrobat is a well-known program. If you've seen a PDF, you've used Adobe. You can get Adobe Acrobat Reader, which is a free program that allows you to open up and read programs and share them with other people. But invest in Adobe Acrobat DC. That'll allow you to create and, importantly, edit PDFs so that if you download something that's stored online by electronic filing, you can pull it down and open it up and, rejigger it however you wish to do it. I would get those 2 products, but if you want to do it a little less expensively, Google Docs is a good option too. So what next? What else do we have? We've covered Adobe Acrobat Reader. What about apps? So as part of the computer and technology section, I and some colleagues used to put on these lectures called 60 Apps in 60 Minutes. And they were fun lectures, but we found that almost the day that these things came out, they were already obsolete because there are millions of apps out there that fit on your phone and your mobile device. An app is just an application. It's a little tiny software program that runs things, usually in miniature version, to fit your phone or your tablet device. Which ones to use? Well, if you use an Apple product and you go to the App Store, you can look and see the business tools. Just start typing in things into the search. If you want a scanning product, something that scans documents with your phone, type in scanner and you'll see so many different options and you can look at the reviews. If you're using the Google Play Store for an Android device, works pretty much the same way. So which ones do I use? I've just written down a few. I'll tick them off. Adobe Fill and Sign. That's a good one for signing documents and filling in blanks, particularly PDFs. So if you work with PDFs, this helps you sign things. And what'll happen is you'll pull it up on your mobile device or your tablet and you'll be able to sign it with your finger. Or if you have a signature already done and saved, you can just tap a button that will allow you to insert your signature into the document. You can also insert the date or insert some extra text, which is pretty good if you're filling out questionnaires. Let's say you're wrangling with an SBA loan or something like that and you have to fill out a form. You can actually do that on your phone now. You don't need a keyboard. So Adobe Fill and Sign is good. If you like taking, organizing, and sharing notes, Evernote is a good idea. Let's see, I don't have a picture of Evernote, so let me go to the next screen. You just saw a picture of Genius Scan. This is probably one of the best business tools you'll find anywhere. I love Genius Scan. I use this all the time. What it does for you is it allows you to use the camera on your phone to take a picture of a document or a photograph, and then it allows you to save it in a PDF form. But it's so much more than that because it allows you to reconfigure the form so that you'll get away from the rumpled edges of your document, or if it's off center a little bit, it'll allow you to sharpen it, to contrast it, to brighten the document. Now, the thing about an app like Genius Scan, is another one called Turbo Scan that I like, is that If you're using it on a phone, obviously you can only take one picture at a time. So it's kind of cumbersome. You'd want a scanner to do big jobs, but there are times when I'm in court and there's a reset form, and I'll just snap a photo of it and then I'll text it over to Claudia. Claudia will then take it, and she won't even have to scan it or anything. She can just do whatever needs to be done. In fact, if I'm feeling extra productive, I'll take a picture of a reset form and store it right into Dropbox. So Genius Scan, definitely get that one. Another program you might be interested in is called iZip, I-Z-I-P. That's for managing and viewing zip files. Zip files still exist. A zip file is when you take stuff that has a lot of data, like it used to be when you were sending documents, but now it could be just about anything. And when it's packed all together, it's put in some kind of a compacting program called a zip file. And the person that you send it to can now receive it by email. Emails are limited in the size of material that they can send. So if you work with zip files at all, this one's good for managing them and viewing them on your phone, iZip. Another one is called Sign Now. You don't have to worry about taking any notes, by the way, because all of this is in the paper that we'll put out. I have it's single spaced, but it's about a 5-page paper, and it's got all of this information in it. Sign Now is a good alternative to Adobe Fill and Sign. I use it a lot. Turbo Scan, just like Genius Scan. And then one other, this one is a must, VLC. You may recognize VLC by seeing its signature orange cone logo. The orange cone, it's a striped orange-white cone, like a traffic cone, tells you that this is the ubiquitous media program that can play just about any kind of audio or video file. Many times you'll get a video file from a third party, like security footage in a criminal case, and it's supposed to show something that happened, or an interrogation video. And unless it's using proprietary software, there's a good chance that VLC can read it. So if you don't use VLC on your desktop computer, just go and search for it in a Google search, type in VLC space media, and you'll find it and download it. Well, there's also a version that works on mobile devices and tablets, and I use this thing all the time. If I've got a complex case where there are a lot of audio recorded witness statements, or sometimes videos, what the police will dub as a confession, I am forever using VLC. And a cool thing about VLC is that it will access material directly from services like Dropbox and Google Drive. And I think Box is also one of the services it works well with. So that way I just get to open up my VLC on my phone. It goes directly into my Dropbox. And from my Dropbox, I pull out whatever media file I want to view or listen to. So those are some of the ones I use. There are hundreds of them, hundreds that lawyers will use. So what's next? Great. So now we know how to scan documents and turn them into something digital. We also know how to create documents by using tools like Microsoft Word, Google Docs, Apple Pages, and Adobe. We also know how to store them places, right? So we can store stuff on the internet, so we'll have access to it 24/7. Well, that's great. You've now effectively ditched the paper from your office. It still exists, but it won't have to clutter up your space anymore. The next thing you should probably try to scale back on is the plastic. Many of us who do criminal defense, if you do retained cases, you accept credit cards and debit cards too. However, some of us are still using those old swipe machines. If you use an old swipe machine that requires your client to come to the office, hand over their card, and you have to swipe it through, or maybe you have a chip reader and you get to just plug the phone, the credit card into a device. If that's all you have, then that's probably not good enough anymore. You need a service that will, in addition to accept credit or debit cards, will create online invoices and give you other ways to pay. An online invoice is really important because it saves your client a trip to the office, and it means that you'll probably get paid faster. So what services do that? There are a couple that are really very good. We use Square. The website is squareup.com, and I'll talk about a competitor to Square in just a moment. But I like some things about Square. Square is best known for that tiny little, it's a reader. It's a little plastic device that plugs into your mobile device. It plugs into your tablet or your phone, and it allows you to swipe a credit card from that tiny little reader. It's about maybe half the size of this Post-it notepad that I'm holding. That's what Square is most popular for, but it also does some other things. Here on the screen, you see a wireless way to pay without any contact. And I'm not talking about avoiding pandemic contact. I'm talking about a more secure way to pay. This screenshot here shows you Apple Pay. Apple Pay is how credit cards are stored on an Apple device, and there are other services that do the same thing for Android devices. If people's credit cards are stored on their phones, you have to have some way to take their credit card. They show up in the office and say, oh my gosh, I don't have my credit card. All I have is my phone. Here's a reader that wirelessly allows them to make a payment. So SquareUp is good. It does all of those things. I wanted to take a moment to see if we could get the pricing on this, and it's in the paper. It's not inexpensive. Let me see if I can pull this up. Here's the pricing for Square. Square will charge you 2.6% for every transaction, plus 10 cents for contactless payments. Swiped credit cards, swiped chips, swiped mag strips, and that kind of thing. So if your client gives you a credit card and you take it the way that's shown on the screen, or you swipe it using one of those Square swiping devices, you're going to pay 2.6% plus 10 cents. So you start to do the math. If you start collecting thousands of dollars in credit card payments, pretty soon this adds up. But you're already paying that with credit card services anyway. So the place to start is with your current credit card service. Find out from that bank that underwrites the credit card what kind of a percentage you're paying, and then take it from there. They also charge you up to 3.5% plus 15 cents for virtual terminals. Invoices, our office sends a lot of invoices. We pay 2.9% plus 30 cents or 3.5% plus 15 cents if it's processed using their Square's card on file option. We don't keep cards on file, but if you're going to start sending online invoices, you're going to see that this thing is going to add up pretty much because you're paying close to 3% for every transaction. But the good thing is that it's a secure payment, it's convenient, and you'll get the money fast. Here's another service that I like a whole lot. We don't use it, but it's called LawPay. LawPay does pretty much the same thing, and it's got prices that I think are slightly more competitive. LawPay has a relationship with the American Bar Association. I believe they're also working through the State Bar of Texas. Claudia, is LawPay still with the State Bar?
I believe so, but the only thing with LawPay, it doesn't let you send invoices.
That's a big downside for us. So we looked at LawPay very closely because we would have jumped from Square to LawPay, but we send a lot of online invoices. And one of the things we've tracked, not statistically, but we've kept an eye on is how often do clients pay and how quickly do clients pay. And we find that online invoicing tends to have clients pay faster. Would you agree with that, Claudia? Because that's what I've been seeing.
Yes. LawPay, I guess somebody asked a question, but LawPay lets you send a link so they can pay, but not create a actual invoice like Square does.
Yeah, so what Square does is it lets you create an invoice within a template, and it's customized because it lets you insert a picture. So, you know, when one of our invoices pops up on the screen, it shows a picture of the building that we're in. And we have like a little message there that says, you know, thank you, we appreciate you. Or, you know, if you'd like to pay in another form, please do this. And we found that when we send out these invoices, people tend to pay the same day. So I think invoicing is pretty key. LawPay is a little bit less expensive, so it's kind of a trade-off. And they both have good devices. LawPay has the swiping device too, and as you can see, they both work on Google and Android devices. So those are options. But what if you don't want to pay those fees? What if you don't want to pay, you know, as little as, I think it starts at like 1.9% for LawPay on up to 2.9%, depending on what kind of Square service you use. What if you don't want to pay anything? Well, there are ways that you can do that. They are not really set up for businesses as much as they are for consumers. You're more likely to use these services to pay a gardener or a workout trainer than to pay a law office. That being said, there are ways for clients to send money from their account into another account, your account, and to do it without a fee being charged to either person. Usually takes a couple of days if you want to do a free transaction. The most popular service is probably Venmo. I use Venmo when I want to pay, you know, if somebody has done work on my house or something. You'll be surprised, a lot of people use Venmo. That's pretty easy. Here is a tip for using Venmo. Every one of your friends can see you and you can see their transactions. Go into the settings and make your transactions private, because as you can see here on the screen, you've got stuff that says bowl on the beach, lunch, test, couch and cleaning. You will be surprised what people put on Venmo and what they've paid for. It's embarrassing. Don't be that person. Make your transactions private. So let's say you don't want Venmo, or you want another service. Google Pay is pretty good. PayPal has been around for a long time. I think if PayPal is going to do a credit card transaction, they may charge you a small fee for it, but it's another way of doing it. And then there is, I never know how to pronounce this word, whether it's Zelle or Zelly, but Zelle or Zelly is basically a service that takes lots of different banks and threads them together so that you can transfer money from account to different accounts, you know, cross-platform, different banks. By the way, Venmo does that too. Venmo, it doesn't matter which bank you're using. If you use Chase and somebody else is using Bank of America, the transaction is seamless. In the future, these are the ways that people are going to conduct business. Let's see, what else? I wanted to spend just a few moments talking about working virtually. So you've ditched the plastic for the most part. You've ditched your paper. Can you ditch your office? Can you ditch the brick and mortar? What we are finding now that it is possible to work without an office. Most of us did not choose this situation. It was sort of forced upon us. But if you want to take the plunge, if you want to do more, you can do more if you're comfortable with it. You can get something called a virtual office. In the paper, there's the following definition for a virtual office. I want to read it to you because it's very, very precise and descriptive. It's a service that enables employees and business owners to work remotely by providing a range of business functions accessible through the internet. It also, and this is key, enables organizations to create and maintain a presence in a desirable location without the need to pay rent for an actual office. So here's the way that it works. You work remotely, but if you want to meet with clients, you can rent office space for a small fee. So you will have to make occasional trips to the office if you want to, but otherwise, all of your employees, if you choose, can work remotely. There are definitely advantages and disadvantages to that. It is not like we expected to be. I expected this journey into working remotely to be like this guy here with a notebook computer and a cup of coffee that was half the size of my head. In reality, what it's more like is this is what a virtual office looks like. You're going to occasionally make trips into the office where you're going to get a very sparse office place to conduct business. If you're comfortable with that, you can end up saving a lot of money. You'll save money on lease payments. You'll save money on mortgage payments if you own a building or you own your own office or something. This is what we also use to keep us in contact with our clients, with courts, and working remotely, talking with our staff. I'm not going to cover Zoom except to say that in the paper, you'll find a link to a video that I made that gives you a walkthrough of how to use Zoom on a mobile device. It's really pretty easy to use. It's not exactly like you expect. This picture that we see here is what we expect Zoom to be like. We think that everybody's going to be perfectly coiffed and have pleasing backgrounds. And in reality, this is what most of us are seeing every day. This is Zoom in real life. And I don't mean to pick on this particular group of people. That's pretty much what we're all seeing right now, whether it's working with a court or otherwise. There are other services out there if you want to do video conferencing. GoToMeeting, you can still use Skype, you can use FaceTime. They're all listed out in the paper. My advice, use Zoom, which is what you're using right now. And you're probably already comfortable with it because you've logged into this lecture. It's a lot easier to learn one system. And the choice has already been made for us, as previous lecturers have covered. That's what courts are using right now. They're using Zoom, and that's what I recommend you use now. So that's it. If you want to take the plunge, you can go and get a virtual office and completely ditch the brick and mortar. You can and you should be getting rid of the paper. That should be doing yesterday. If you're already doing that, good for you. That's exactly what you need to do to be successful in the new environment. Getting rid of the plastic just means finding more ways to get paid. And accepting plastic, accepting credit cards and debit cards is part of the formula, but my advice is to go beyond that and start generating invoices, because you'll find you get paid more reliably and more frequently. And then finally, start getting comfortable with video conferencing. I believe that video conferencing is here to stay. This is an interesting time for all of us, and we're all learning how to use these tools. But what's key to the formula is that judges, courts, are learning how to use them now too. And they've discovered that it's not always necessary to bring people in. You can now have parties from all different locations meeting virtually in a virtual courtroom, and they don't have to get together. This has all sorts of ramifications. It saves time, it saves money, it keeps employees from having to miss work. Court appearances now can be waived more easily. So I think that we should all get used to video conferencing and making it a permanent staple, because I think it's here to stay. A lot of the stuff we're talking about is here to stay. So Claudia, before we throw it out to questions, do you have anything that you'd like to add? I see some questions are coming in already.
I answered a couple of questions while you were talking.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the invoices really do, I found that they work the best, that we get paid pretty quickly. I tend to send them 15 days out. So when they're going to be due within 15 days, give them 15 days to pay. And they usually come in before they're due. So
Yeah,
that's one of the things that have really worked for us.
It's been a revelation. We've gone from having to, sometimes chase people down and deal with late payments versus getting early payments. And, I mean, this is a small consideration, but you're putting money into an IOLTA account, a trust account. The sooner you put it in there, the sooner you might have access to it to be able to sweep it if it's earned. And also just from, a public good work standpoint, those accounts actually do accrue interest. They're swept into a fund by the state bar, which uses it for legal services for the poor. So having clients pay fast and more reliably benefits a lot of people.
And Grant, we've had a ton of questions. And maybe a good one to start with. It's interesting from the chat and the Q&A functions. We have a lot of folks who it sounds like they're eager to start using these tools, and some folks who are already using a few of these. But then there are a couple folks out there who say, questions like, why not keep it simple with paper files? I only use technology when I'm forced to. So I guess the first question is it simpler to use paper files? I think a lot of people think that it is. Is that true?
The funny thing about it is it's simpler to have digital files because there's so much more you can do with them. You can access them and you don't have to flip through them. You say simple, okay, let's say you're doing some kind of complex case, a child sex assault case. And you know that those files can be just voluminous. You can get hundreds, sometimes thousands of pages of stuff, or maybe a financial crime where you have boxes of information. It's a lot simpler to be able to search those things really quickly online. You can do a word search. If you're just looking for the transaction from April 15th, 2020, you can type April 15th, 2020 into a search bar on your mobile device, and up will pop the 5 pages of documents from the 10,000 of other things. It's also simpler when you're going to go to trial because you want to have access to things very, very quickly. Now, I still keep paper files. And as the folks in my office can tell you, I still take an actual physical paper trial notebook to court. So is it simpler to keep something in paper? Well, yes, I suppose it's simpler not to have, a bathroom in your house, not to have indoor plumbing. But there are so many advantages to doing it the new way, you'll come to appreciate it no matter what area of practice you have or what stage you're in.
And is there a particular benefit? We're in this interesting moment where so many courts are moving online, and Texas really has been, in some ways a leader. And, I know some folks are not wild about moving online with courts, and there are certainly some big dangers with it. But Texas is one of the first to, certainly the biggest one to move so quickly online. Are there advantages to using some of the tools you're talking about now that we're faced with online courts too?
Yeah, there are plenty of advantages. Now, those of us who do federal work know that this stuff has been online for years in the PACER system because all of the documents are filed and you search for them by name of client or case number. And with their PACER system for filing documents, their e-filing system, it's been going on for a long time. You just upload a PDF file. So when we say that Texas is an early adopter, it's an early adopter among states. Mm-hmm. The difficult part is that Texas didn't make this uniform. They came up with a patchwork system that has different services to which you can subscribe. That was part of the first challenge. Second thing is that people who are not represented by attorneys, pro se clients, I think they could initially file, paper things at the clerk's office, and I believe they still can. So some lawyers have regretted that this has been foisted on us. And the third thing is, and this drives everybody crazy, when you go to file something online through Texas e-filing, sometimes it doesn't get through. Some clerk will look at it and say, well, that's not in exactly the right format that we wanted it. You didn't describe it the right way. So we're going through some growing pains. By being an early state adopter, yeah, we're seeing some problems. But in the long run, I think we're going to be better suited as online services can do more and more things. Right now it's documents, but eventually it'll be video files that you can get at the clerk or audio files, you name it. Anything that can go online will eventually be accessible through your district clerk's office.
Are there any concerns, a couple of different people asked about this, are there any concerns about security when it comes to cloud storage?
Oh my, yes. Oh, sorry if my eyes bulged out there for a minute, because that is a big issue. Okay, so with online clouds, storage, the first thing you have to do is password protect everything. That's at a minimum, so that people don't have a way to just get into your files automatically if they pick up your phone that's lying around the court. Another thing to consider is something called two-factor identification or two-factor passwords, where you have to do one kind of a password coupled with another kind of a password. Now, it makes it more cumbersome for you to access your material, but you've got to just think about it this. Think about it this way. I'm in an Uber. I'm driving someplace. I'm late for a meeting. I get out of my Uber and I realize after the Uber has left, my phone is still there or my tablet is still there. And it's open, and for the next however many minutes before the screen blacks out, that person has access to everything on my phone. You have to do what you can to prevent them from getting access to your client files and other sensitive material. If you're not password protecting getting into your phone, and then password protecting getting into your online storage service at a minimum, you're putting yourself at risk, and your clients too.
Do you have any advice for, we have so many passwords these days, just to sign on your phone and your laptop and your tablet and all this stuff, and then for each of the programs too. Do you have any advice on password storage, 1Pass or anything like that?
Yeah, 1Pass is a good option, Jeff. There are I think LastPass is another one. There are all of these services which will store all of your passwords. And you need one password to remember to get into that service. And then these services will tie into your apps and other things so that they will automatically log in for you. It's a pretty good option to have. There are subscriptions, you have to pay money for it. It's not free. But in the future, maybe none of this will be necessary. We'll all be doing it by retinal scanner or something else. But for now, yeah, that makes sense because I can't tell you what many of my passwords are. The most popular password in the world right now, I think, is still password. That's the password that people use. And that's just too easy for people to hack.
There was some old Mel Brooks joke about password being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that I'm sure that's still being used a lot out there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So another question that popped up, for folks who are using both Microsoft and Apple, and they're bouncing back and forth between one device that uses Microsoft and one and Apple, is there one cloud service that's better than the others, or does it matter?
It doesn't matter with the cloud service. And also, by the way, Apple devices can also use Word, and PCs can use Apple Pages and other things, but they're all cross-compatible now.
Got it. That's great. Specific question. Somebody asked, which version of Genius Scan do you recommend? Because it looks like there are multiple versions out there.
Okay, just type in Genius Scan, and let me see. I can even pull up my Genius Scan right now. It's just simply entitled Genius Scan, and the great thing about Genius Scan, love this product, is they update it. So Genius Scan to me has the most up-to-date version of anything you can do with a scanning product. All you need to do is go to the Google Play Store if you've got an Android device, or the App Store, and type in Genius space scan. And the first option that pops up, it'll show an orange logo. That's the one you want.
Great, that's helpful. Speaking of scanners and everything, does the scanner that you mentioned at the very beginning, does that work with a Mac?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And then
as a matter of fact, okay, so I've got over my shoulder a Fujitsu ScanSnap that works with a Mac. As you can see, I've got an Apple product there, but at the office we have PCs.
Great. Somebody mentioned that I guess LawPay, I think it was Russell or somebody mentioned that LawPay now allows online invoices.
Well, that's terrific.
So
2 weeks ago. Is it an actual invoice that you can customize, or is it just a link to pay?
Don't know.
If it does, then we may make the jump. I am not brand loyal to any of these things. I want whoever is going to charge the lowest interest rates and still be reliable.
Yeah. This is a really like a perennial question. I mean, this is just coming up again and again in the news right now. What are the security concerns when it comes to Zoom? And maybe I'll break that down a little bit. What concerns you when it comes to using Zoom for, say, client communication or a call like this? And then on the other hand, what are your concerns with Zoom when it comes to online courts?
Okay, so let's take the first part of the question, which is communicating with staff or clients. Zoom has had some security issues because they've suffered growing pains. They've increased by something like 100-fold in just a matter of weeks. There are people who Zoom bomb, you know, like photo bombing, where people just appear in your picture. There are people who just barge into your meetings, and you're wondering, how do they do that? Well, the easiest way to do that is they get your meeting ID. But if you have a meeting ID and a password, then it becomes much more difficult to do. So I think that in terms of communicating with your staff and your clients, when you schedule a Zoom meeting, always generate a password. So they'll have this two-step way to log in. Now, with courts, that's on them because the host is usually the judge. What I have found is that those who care the most about security will have people in the queue line to be admitted into the meeting that they'll have to admit one at a time. So there's somebody there who's a gatekeeper. And then if like a Zoom bomber or somebody who has no authority to be part of the discussion tries to get in, then the gatekeeper just won't let him into the discussion. Is that still going to be 100% secure? No, because remember, there are always hackers who have nothing on their hands except time, and they will figure out a way to do this. But we use ATM machines, or at least we used them for a while, and that's about as sensitive as something as you can imagine. Medical records are protected too. So I'm confident that we'll meet the security challenges and this will be reasonably secure.
And I guess even going to court in person has never been 100% secure. I mean, there have always been issues there.
Secure. I mean, they have metal scanners, but they don't catch everything.
Yeah. This is getting a little bit off of the actual hardware and software that you've been talking about. But a question that comes up again and again is when you're working with online courts, have you ever introduced, so video hearing, have you ever introduced evidence? And how are documents and exhibits handled in that context?
Okay, so I've talked to a lot of people about this. Here is my recommendation. First, you should have your exhibits ready to go. They should be scanned in some kind of digital format like we've been talking about, whether they're photos or documents and whatnot. They should be numbered, and then you should just e-file them, file them online so that everybody has access to them. Then during the hearing, you can move to admit exhibit number this or exhibit number that, which is already on file with the court and it's marked and that kind of thing. Now, how do you start talking about it? Well, right now, you know, at the beginning of this lecture, I started sharing my screen. You ask the judge for screen sharing capacity so that you can share your screen. That way you can pull up the document or the photo and you can say, Your Honor, I'd like us to look at this photo right here of the scene where this happened. Now, I want you to look in the upper right-hand corner where I'm pointing at it with my mouse. So with screen sharing, you have a way to show it, to publish it. With filing it online, you have a way to move to admit it into evidence.
And Grant, we're at the top of the hour. We still have actually a couple hundred people online watching this, so clearly there's a lot of interest. Do you have just a few more minutes so we can just do maybe one or two more questions? And those that have to go, thank you again for joining us. This will all be online. The materials will be online. TCDLA will follow up about CLE, but thanks for joining us. We're going to do maybe just a couple more questions. This one, the question is just what kind of backup service do you recommend?
Like a backup service or an online storage service?
Well, it doesn't really specify. Okay.
So I'll sort of cut to the chase here because our online storage service essentially is our backup service. Now, there are certain kinds of computers that will, you can use not way back, but you can take imaging and go back into your hard drive. But for all the stuff that's critical in our office, we put it into online storage. And we use Dropbox. I trust Dropbox more than anything else. It costs a few dollars a month per user extra, but it's ubiquitous. Every lawyer who has ever received a Dropbox link and opened it up to get a document knows basically how to use Dropbox. And I also, you can segregate these things so that if you run your law firm and you've got sensitive material that you only want yourself to see and you don't want the staff to necessarily look at, you can give your staff access to some of the folders, but you just access to other folders. And that's a pretty good way to back up all of your stuff. Just drag it and drop it as you go. If you just really want to preserve a local computer, want a desktop, and you want to keep that forever, then use local storage. Just get one of those local hard drives from Seagate or Western Digital, and you'll be able to back stuff up as much as you want.
Great. And then final question, just to loop back to that first question we had during Q&A. So if you are somebody who's either technophobic or just all this gives you a little bit of pause and you don't know where to start, would you recommend that they go back over this video and just kind of start with the first things we were talking about in terms of the scanner? What's the best kind of entry point for moving to digital?
Yes, and I wanted to add something about online backup. There are services like Carbonite that you can use that automatically back up your computer as you go. So look at Carbonite, just search for Carbonite and then Carbonite competitors. There's another one that I use, the name of which escapes me. So the question is, where do we start? Where do we start with stuff? I think the first thing you do if you're starting from scratch is go buy a scanner. I really liked the older versions of this ScanSnap because it had only one button. It said scan on it. You plugged it into your desktop computer and you pushed that button. You could not mess this up if you tried. Once you press the scan button, then the document started feeding into it and the image pops up on the screen. That's what you should do. Start by getting a good scanner and then play with it. Start scanning stuff around the house.
I have the scanner.
Yeah.
And this is the button. You just hit scan.
Yes, I have it right back there too. Yeah, it's like the size of a loaf of bread and you just feed stuff in. But when I got my first scanner, I started scanning everything. I got bank receipts, those things you throw away at the teller drive-through. I just scanned them because I was fascinated that you could stick something into a machine and have it pop up on your computer. That's the first step. Once you do that and you can see that you can digitize things, then all you need to do is move to some place to store it. And then that's it. You're off and running.
That's great. Cool. Grant and Claudia, thank you both again for doing this. We appreciate it. Thanks for, the comments are just popping up in the chat box. People just loved it. Again, this is recorded, so if you all haven't had a chance to, if you had to miss the beginning, you can go back and watch this. The materials that Grant mentioned will be online as well. And again, we appreciate you all doing this. We're always happy to partner with TCDLA, and hopefully we'll see you all next week for Padilla and online courts.
Thanks so much. We enjoyed
it. All right. Thank you all. Bye.
Everyone.